Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the fascinating science of human potential. We're going to figure out exactly how to identify a student's unique cognitive strengths and, more importantly, how to customize our teaching methods to help them absolutely thrive. So, whether you're managing a bustling classroom, homeschooling your kids, or you're just genuinely curious about how the human mind actually learns, you are in the right place. Let's get into it.
So let's just put the big, uncomfortable question right out there on the table. Is the traditional pencil and paper IQ test actually failing our students by totally ignoring the diverse ways that they can be smart? I mean, for decades, our educational systems have been stuck in this industrialized model that basically says your intellectual worth is all about your verbal and logical skills. But human capability, it is so much broader and richer than what one single standardized test could ever measure.
Educational theorist Benjamin Bloom absolutely hit the nail on the head here. He firmly believed that with the right customized approach, virtually every single student can succeed. He knew we can't just expect everyone to master the exact same material in the exact same way. And honestly, that insight perfectly sets the stage for what we're talking about today, breaking out of that old one-size-fits-all trap.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for This Explainer. We'll kick things off with the intelligence myth, redefine how we're actually smart, and then get super practical with identifying unique strengths, customizing your teaching, and finally, moving beyond standard tests.
Okay, Section 1, the intelligence myth. Let's unpack the fundamental flaws of this one-size-fits-all mindset that has dominated schools for way too long.
For the longest time, traditional schooling has leaned heavily on a really narrow definition of intelligence. You'll often hear it called the G factor, or general intelligence. And this model heavily favors the student who just happens to be naturally gifted at reading and logic. But modern cognitive scientists, they're pushing for a dynamic intelligence model. They're showing us that human potential is actually this incredibly multifaceted collection of distinct cognitive abilities that literally change and develop over time.
Moving right along to Section 2, redefining how we are smart. Let's see how this dynamic approach builds into some incredibly robust, scientifically backed frameworks.
Now, we really need to bust a major myth here because it's a trap a lot of us fall into. We constantly hear about learning styles, the whole idea that you're strictly a visual learner or strictly an auditory learner. Well, guess what? Research shows there is basically no persuasive evidence that matching instruction to those sensory preferences actually improves outcomes. None. Instead, what we want to look at is Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. These aren't just sensory preferences. These are actual distinct cognitive capacities. They are completely different domains of processing the world around us.
Back in 1983, Gardner introduced this framework, and he outlined 8 specific intelligences. Now, schools generally love linguistic and logical mathematical, your word smarts and number smarts. But Gardner said, wait, what about spatial visual or bodily kinesthetic? What about musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalist intelligences? This was a total game changer. It proved that a student who might be struggling in a traditional math class could actually be an absolute genius when it comes to spatial visualization or bodily movement.
And what's so cool is how these map directly to the real world. Think about it. You know that kid who literally cannot sit still in their chair? They aren't necessarily just distracted. They might possess a profound bodily kinesthetic strength, which, by the way, is the exact same intelligence utilized by highly skilled, life-saving surgeons. Or that student who's always daydreaming, staring out the window. They might have a deep naturalistic intelligence, picking up on complex environmental patterns that the rest of us completely miss.
Psychologist Robert Sternberg widens the lens even more with his triarchic theory. He reminds us that true intelligence, it requires way more than just the analytical book smarts that we're always testing for. It also demands creative intelligence, the ability to innovate, imagine, and think outside the box, and practical intelligence, which is the capacity to actually take your skills and apply them effectively to real-world, everyday situations.
Okay, Section 3. Identifying unique student strengths. We've got the vocabulary now, so how do we actually spot these diverse minds in action?
The truth is, you can't customize your teaching if you don't really know who you're teaching, right? So first things first, just observe their natural behaviors. What are they gravitating toward when they have free time? Second, utilize diverse assessment tools. Dr. Terry Armstrong's 56-statement questionnaire is fantastic for this. Students just rate statements about their own habits to reveal their top intelligences. And third, you want to encourage metacognitive self-reflection.
That third step, metacognition, absolute game changer. Metacognition literally means thinking about your own thinking.
When you have students use reflective journals or diagnostic surveys, you're doing something incredible. You're empowering them to build intense self-awareness, because when a student truly understands their own unique cognitive profile, they can identify their own roadblocks, self-correct on the fly, and most importantly, advocate for themselves.
Section 4. Customizing your teaching methods. This right here is the practical heartbeat of our explainer.
Now, I know some of you might be panicking right now, thinking, wait, do I need to write 8 different lesson plans for every single topic? No way! Gardner explicitly says you do not need to redesign your entire curriculum overnight. Instead, he suggests something he calls pluralizing. And pluralizing simply means providing multiple doorways into the exact same room of knowledge. If you understand a topic deeply, you can teach it in several different ways.
Let's look at pluralization in action with a universally dreaded topic, grammar, specifically parts of speech. Instead of just handing out another boring worksheet, pluralize it. For your musical learners, challenge them to write a song or a rap teaching the rules. For your spatial learners, print out a story and have them use different colored highlighters to map out nouns versus verbs. And for those kinesthetic learners, take them outside and create a physical relay race where they have to sprint to categorize words. You're teaching the exact same fundamental concept, but you're opening totally different cognitive doors.
Listen, if you want to start pluralizing today, you can absolutely do this. Just start small. Pick 1 or maybe 2 new intelligences you don't normally use and just fold them into tomorrow's lesson. Offer your students a choice board for their next project so they can decide how to show what they know. Bring in physical manipulative tools like unit blocks or modeling clay for math and science. Or just utilize some collaborative group work to really harness the social energy of your interpersonal learners. You've got this.
Finally, Section 5. Moving beyond standardized tests. Because let's be honest, if we're teaching differently, we absolutely have to assess differently. One of the most effective tools out there is the comprehensive portfolio. Ditch the stress of that single high-stakes multiple-choice test on a Friday. Instead, a portfolio is a chronological collection of diverse student work curated over time. We're talking written essays sitting right alongside lab logs, video presentations, and even artwork. This approach actually allows educators to value a student's real cognitive assets and long-term growth over a rigid testing benchmark. You can also bring in some really engaging evaluative modes like thematic choice boards. Picture a bingo-style grid where a student gets to pick a final project that specifically targets their strongest intelligence domain. Or try triarchic case studies. Have students analyze real-world decisions like, say, watching a survival TV show and classifying the practical versus the creative choices the contestants make. These methods ensure your evaluation process remains incredibly rigorous, but deeply respects the diverse minds sitting in your classroom.
We've covered a ton of ground today, from shattering that old single intelligence myth to actually practically pluralizing our lessons. So I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought, whether you're teaching in a traditional classroom or at your kitchen table. Looking at the materials you are teaching right now, which intelligence are you leaving behind today? And how are you going to pluralize your teaching tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring the incredible potential of the human mind, and I'll catch you next time.